Good morning. It's the 15th of February 2022. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis, and welcome to The Anthony Davis Show as we spend the morning together. It's the morning here in Los Angeles, California. It's just after 9 on the West Coast, just after 12 Eastern. And thanks for spending your morning with Backchannel. We've got lots to discuss. We look at the news in this program, talk about what's happening around the country. We'll look at some of the papers making the headlines. And a reminder that Backchannel is the only place where you can watch and chat with live shows and the hosts right here on your device. So if you've got an Echo Show, that's the best one because that's the one that you can simply wake it up, say the word say, and then your message. Andrea's just joined us. She's listening. Andrea, if you want to see us, then all you have to do is go to YouTube and watch the live stream there. And you can communicate at backchannel.tv. That's like a web chat as well. Stacey, yes, I'm ready for lunch hour with you. Welcome. Good morning. Nice to see that you're with us as well. Some of the subjects we're going to be discussing this morning: a company that's made a rifle in one of the deadliest school shootings in the US has settled with the families of the victims. We'll look at that in more detail. Prince Andrew settled a civil sexual assault case brought against him in the US by Virginia Giuffre. We'll look into what that means for the Duke of York. Also, Donald Trump's accounting firm has cut ties with the former president and said a decade of financial report should no longer be relied upon. We'll look at that a little bit further. And also, continuing our celebration of Black History Month, we'll take a look at the child prodigy, the pioneer scientist and civil rights advocate, Dr. Margaret James Strickland Collins. So that's kind of how it's looking. Andrea, if you're in Florida, what newspaper are you using? Because we can review your paper, you see. That's the great thing about Backchannel. It's just, we serve you. So if you've got a newspaper that's local to you that you would like us to take a look at together, then we can do that as well. We're going to start in California, because that's where I am, with the Times Standard. Let's see what they have to say today. They lead with West mega drought worsens. Yes, the American West's mega drought deepened so much last year that it's now the driest in at least 1,200 years. And it's a worst-case climate change scenario playing out live, a new study finds. A dramatic drying in 2021, about as dry as 2002, and one of the driest years ever recorded for the region, pushed the 22-year drought past the previous record holder for mega droughts in the late 1500s and shows no sign of easing in the near future, according to a study on Monday in the journal Nature Climate Change. So, there is actually a kind of California water ban. You know, we're not allowed to wash our cars at the moment. And that will change, I'm sure, but not just yet. They only brought it in recently because we did have some quite good rain and then, nothing. Day Without Immigrants is also the headline. It says on Monday afternoon, several dozen people participated in a march organized by Humboldt County immigrant advocacy group Centro del Pueblo from the gazebo in Eureka to the Humboldt County Courthouse to call on Democrats in the federal government to offer a pathway to citizenship through the Build Back Better bill. It's the Day Without Immigrants protest aimed to get immigrants to abstain from going to work, school, or shopping on one day to call attention to their cause. Saw a few dozen people with signs and slogans. Just a few dozen. I mean, the reality is in America, I've said this before, that it's not easy to get time off to attend a protest. Some countries are more generous about that than others. Not America. You want to go to a protest, you do it in your own time, they'll say. Or you lose your job. So I'm just very aware of the fact that the reason that we don't see the amount of demo and peaceful protest in the US like we do in many other countries is because the work ethic here and the work calendar is just so full on. You know, we only get 2 weeks holiday here in America. Where I'm from in England, we get at least 4 or 5 weeks, plus all the bank holidays and public holidays. And in other countries, I mean, it's even more generous. People really work in the US, it's relentless. And it's unhealthy as well. People work so hard because the cost of living is so high, and so you end up in this perpetual cyclical motion, just trying to make enough money to be able to live. The Build Back Better bill, which had the support of both California senators, but it's currently stalled, currently offers a form of parole for undocumented immigrants who've been in the country since January 1st, 2011, but does not offer a path to citizenship. Perez noted that while the parole function of the bill, while imperfect, would still benefit many immigrants across the country if it were passed. I mean, I like this as a concept. You know, I really think the idea of having people who've been here for a long time already, who have contributed, who have paid in tax, who've worked, absolutely they should be entitled to get citizenship. Of course they should. You know, that's what you look for in a citizen, isn't it? Somebody who actually wants to be part of the society. You know, an immigrant is not a criminal, as the previous administration might have suggested. You know, not a just because you're seeking asylum doesn't mean you're automatically a criminal. Hello to Howie. Welcome, Howie, who's watching. James as well. Hello in California. Nice to know you're part of the show. If you American or you're an immigrant like me, we're celebrating the immigrants today. I love being an immigrant. You know, I love it. I'll always be an immigrant. I mean, that's the crazy thing. And I'm sure that if you even were born in America, your family history is one of immigration as well. You know, most people are from somewhere. Joe Biden's Irish. Kremlin sees a diplomatic path on Ukraine, it says. The Kremlin signaled on Monday it's ready to keep talking with the West about security grievances that led to the current Ukraine crisis, offering hope that Russia might not invade its beleaguered neighbor within days, as the US and European allies increasingly fear. Questions remain about Russian President Vladimir Putin's intentions, however, and countries are evacuating diplomats and on alert for possible imminent war amid the worst East-West tensions since the Cold War. Nursing home staff demand better conditions, also on the front of the Times Standard. Okay, let's jump on to another one here. Stacey said some people just don't care about the immigrant sword. I don't know if... maybe sword misheard you, or maybe it misheard you for sword, but I totally get the message. All right, let's go to the Fresno Bee now. We'll stay in California just for a moment and see what Fresno has happening right now. They lead with on Parkland anniversary, advocates press for gun control. That's right, 4 years after 17 people were gunned down at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Families and gun control advocates are pressing President Joe Biden to do more to address gun violence. One father of a victim killed in the shooting sent an early morning tweet on Monday, the anniversary of the Parkland shooting, saying he'd climbed a 150-foot tall crane near the White House. The whole world will listen to Joaquim today, he said. He has a very important message. The father, Manuel Oliver, said in a video tweeted about 6:50 a.m., referring to his son. I asked for a meeting with Joe Biden a month ago. I never got that meeting. So he unfurled a sign, showed a photo of his son, and criticized Biden for gun deaths on his watch. Police were called to the scene where at least 2 people were on the crane. They said that 3 people were taken into custody but didn't identify them. I mean, we in England have a similar campaign of parents. It's called Fathers for Justice, and they're all always scaling something. And it does work, you know, it does get people's attention because it's a death-defying stunt. But it's just tragic that that's what people are having to do to get their point heard. And you know, I've always been very interested in what lengths people will go to when they feel the frustration of their protests not being heard or their calls not being answered. And this is why, when I think back to the LA riots, you know, people couldn't understand why LA locals were setting fire to their own city. You know, why would they do that to their own city? And it's the frustration of not being heard. If you really care passionately about something, whether it be civil rights or gun control, then it's irrelevant what you destroy. It's just about being heard, being seen. Stacey said there should be no guns, period, here in America. I agree. I completely agree. Well, Stacey, you're in Texas, right? So there's a huge gun population in Texas. So do you ever see people? I mean, do they have open carry in Texas? I think they do. Do you see, if you're out, do you ever see people carrying weapons? It would terrify me. Also on the front of the Fresno Bee, Kremlin ready for more talks with West amid Ukraine tensions, and a really quite amazing photograph of members of the National Guard of Ukraine looking out of the window on Monday as they ride in a bus through the city of Kiev. There's this very kind of sad Eastern European look, which I recognize from my photographs of my ancestors. And I can really see that fear in the face of this kid. I mean, he can't be older than, 20, maybe 19. And he's a National Guard of Ukraine. It says more NATO troops headed to Eastern Europe, and some nations work to move their citizens and diplomats out of Ukraine on Monday. Stacey says, I have seen people with guns, but only up close. Thank you. The Kremlin signaled on Monday it's ready to keep talking with the West about security grievances that led to the Ukraine crisis, offering hope that Russia might not invade its beleaguered neighbor within days, as the US and Europe increasingly fear. That's what it says here on the front of the Fresno Bee. Nunes has $11 million in campaign cash and options concerning it. It says former Congressman Devin Nunes left the United States House of Representatives to lead former President Donald Trump's social media venture with plenty of political capital in his pocket. The California Republican departed with more than $11.3 million stored in his campaign account, according to his most recent Federal Election Commission filing for the period ending on December 31st. He had an additional $426,000 in his Leadership Political Action Committee, the new PAC fund. Nunes set some records in the process. He had more cash on hand than any congressional candidate who announced they would retire during or at the end of his term, according to data compared by Open Secrets, which tracks campaign finance. So there we go. That's the Fresno Bee this morning. If you're a Fresno fan, where should we go now? LA Times. That's right here. I wonder if the LA Times is still celebrating the Super Bowl. It's Tuesday now. We've probably moved on. Homelessness crime damage, Newsom in poll. It says less than 5 months after Californians overwhelmingly rejected a recall effort against Governor Gavin Newsom, voters are growing more dissatisfied with the governor, and a solid majority believe the state is headed in the wrong direction, according to a new UC Berkeley Institute Governmental Studies poll, co-sponsored by the LA Times. They say concerns about rising crime and California seemingly intractable homelessness crisis emerged as the top political undercurrents driving voter dissatisfaction, with most of those surveyed giving Newsom poor marks on how he's handled those issues. I mean, I don't know, because it was the same with, Governor Jerry Brown. I mean, I don't know that anybody could solve the homeless crisis in Los Angeles. And I tell you why. California has got the fifth biggest economy in the world. So people come here because they know if they're homeless that it's worth the bus ride to California, because if they beg, they're likely to make more money. The climate is good. They'll be warm. They won't have to freeze at night if they're sleeping rough. And the opioid addiction is rife. And so it's like there's three reasons to keep people on the streets. It's very, very hard to get people who are addicted and living in this kind of environment to get off the street and get back into society. It's very difficult. And governor after governor, mayor after mayor, politician after politician have failed to make this work. And you have to ask why. What's the missing ingredient here? I believe it's all down to economy, cost of living, wages being too low. Wayne has joined us from Florida. Wayne, good morning or good afternoon in your case. Welcome to the show. Nice to see you. How's Florida looking today? It's very overcast here in Los Angeles. I think we're going to have some rain, which is good for the drought. I don't know that there's much of a homeless problem in Florida, because I think Ron DeSantis probably ships them all out. But Wayne, what have you seen? Tell us what the homelessness is like there. Stacey says, I think the missing ingredient is love. Well, maybe you're right. Who would want to be loved by Governor Gavin Newsom is the question. Also, on the front of the LA Times, this Western mega drought is the worst in a millennium. The extreme dryness that has ravaged the American West for more than 2 decades now ranks as the driest 22-year period in at least 1,200 years. and scientists have found that this mega drought is being intensified by humanity's heating of the planet. In their research, the scientists examined major droughts in southwestern North America back to the year 800 and determined that the region's desiccation this century has surpassed the severity of a mega drought in the late 1500s, making it the driest 22-year stretch also on record. The authors of the study also concluded that dry conditions will probably continue through this year and, judging from the past, may persist for years. And there's a photograph of tree stumps, dried out tree stumps in the ghost town of St. Thomas, which resurfaced as Lake Mead's water receded. I mean, this is actually happening now, and I'm still convinced that there are millions of people who care not for this. I heard Ron DeSantis the other day when he was asked a question about climate change. He said, I think that's a Democratic issue, or Democrat issue. He said, that's Democrat stuff. That was his phrase. That's Democrat stuff. And Ukraine's now a tough room for ex-comic president. Yeah, we talked a little bit yesterday about Vladimir Zelensky and how he was a stand-up comedian. And, obviously now he's overseeing a country that's on the imminent threat of war. It says, for years, Vladimir Zelensky was best known among his fellow Ukrainians for cracking them up, a comedy sketch artist. He starred in the hit sitcom Servant of the People, about a history teacher who somehow gets elected president on the strength of a viral video of him ranting about corruption. Now Zelensky really is Ukraine's president. I mean, it's almost unbelievable, isn't it? Having won a shocking landslide victory as political outsider in 2019, and Russia appears poised to invade his country at a moment's notice. And no one's laughing anymore as he tries to figure out how to keep the US on his side, and people from freaking out and Moscow from sending in the tanks. Many Ukrainians are starting to wonder whether their 44-year-old president has the smarts and enough strength to lead them through such a perilous moment. Instead of servant of the people, many here are thinking more of the Godfather. I mean, I don't know much about Vladimir Zelensky's, intellect, but I'm sure that he must be very smart, because to be a comedian requires one of the smartest brains on the planet. You have to be much smarter to be a comedian than you need to be a scientist, because you can learn to be a scientist, you can study to be a scientist, but you can't learn to be a comedian. You have to work on these skills yourself. So I've always put comedians actually right at the top. Good comedians, not bad comedians. If you're a good comedian, successful comedian, and you can make people laugh, then your intellect is, definitely a big part of that. So I don't doubt he has a good brain. But being a diplomat on the world stage, that requires a certain level of skill and experience, more importantly. Will new chief take LAUSD to greater heights? This is late last year. Alberto Carvalho gathered with his Miami-Dade principals to review disappointing data on the impact of the pandemic on students. Miami-Dade has long taken pride in its significant strides towards improving academic achievement, but the data showed big dips in English test scores and even bigger drops in math, particularly for students of color. It says that one of his biggest accomplishments during his 13-year tenure was being undermined. No school in recent years has gotten an F under Florida's grading system for measuring school quality, and only a few have received Ds. Although Florida did not require school grades during the 2020 and 2021 year, if marks had been given, nearly 40% of Miami-Dade schools would have gotten Ds and Fs, the district's data showed. Well, that's right, because this guy's coming to LA, isn't he? He takes over as superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District, and the high-stakes challenge to his Miami legacy is the same one he now confronts in LA, except on a bigger, more complex scale. Andrea's joined us. Joanna, welcome. First time on the show. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. If you want to message me, you can go to backchannel.tv. Braulio is with us as well. A wonderful lineup of characters that we have. Marley, welcome Marley. You just managed to get in quick before school. Joanna, maybe you can let me know where you are, if you can go to backchannel.tv, because I think you're using just a normal Echo speaker, and so it doesn't give me any kind of info. And whereas if you've got an Echo show, sometimes it tells me where you are, because you have to introduce yourself, So maybe you could go to backchannel.tv and you could message me there. And Braulio, welcome. Where are you, though? Not sure either. So maybe you can let me know, too, at backchannel.tv. And Marley, always great to have you on the show. He says, it's Marley, I'm back. Did you have to leave for school yesterday? Is that the reason we got cut short together? I think it was. Well, I'm pleased that you're back with us now. We're just looking through the papers, and we're talking about LAUSD. Marley's in Alaska. Oh, he has to leave for school. How far is school? Do you have to travel far? I can't imagine in Alaska that there's that many schools that don't require a certain amount of of commute. Also on the front of the LA Times, curling finds warm home in LA. Nothing beats putting a stone on the button in Vernon, it says. Tucked in the shadows of Vernon, home to king-size warehouses and smoke-belching factories that produce hot dogs, hot sauce and hot pants, it's a place aspiring to be the coolest hang in Los Angeles. 32 degrees cool, like Moose Jaw, Canada, or Bemidji Min. And these days, Beijing, LA is now a hotspot for curling. Every 4 years, when the Winter Olympics comes around, TV viewers stop and notice men and women in funny-looking pants furiously sweeping in front of what looks like a giant tea kettle sliding on ice, and many wonder, couldn't I do that? Yeah, curling is the weirdest game. There's a photograph of Amanda Landry and Gonzalez throwing a stone toward the scoring circle during Hollywood's Curling Club League night. I've been watching some of the Winter Olympics and seeing them. I love to watch skiing. And since we talked on the show the other day about how all of this snow is human-made snow, because they don't have enough snow, and they've got these machines that make snow out of water. I mean, it's like real snow. It's not fake snow, but it's man-made snow. I was like, wow. But when I was watching it, there was this huge snowstorm, and they were literally like, there was so much snow falling from the sky, and I was like, they're not going to need that machine anymore. What's going on with these people? Stacey says it's not the weirdest game, it's the silliest game. Well, that's curling for you. Marley says, I know the fifth unrelated, but I do skiing after school. Great. I mean, I used to go skating after school. Skating was actually part of the school curriculum when I went to school. Every Thursday we would go to an ice rink, because the whole school would go to the ice rink, and we would skate, because they thought that it taught us posture and poise and strength. Isn't that wonderful? So I can ice skate, not very well, because I stopped going there when I was about 12, but I do have very fond memories of en masse with everybody in the school going down to the local ice rink. Actually, it wasn't a local ice rink at all. I think we travelled 13 miles to get to the ice rink on the subway. Okay, that's how the LA Times looks this morning. Let's move on to another one. We've got the Akron Beacon Journal now. They say Hudson Mayor quits amid controversies. This is Craig Schubert. He's resigned from his mostly ceremonial office after two high-profile political controversies. He submitted his resignation to the Clerk of Council on Monday morning and issued a statement. The mayor last week made national headlines when he voiced concerns that allowing ice fishing at a park would bring prostitution to the city. Yeah, we talked about this. Do you remember? They wanted those little huts, you know? He called for school board members to resign over an optional book in a college-level class that he called child pornography. Summit County Prosecutor Sherry Bevan Walsh's office reviewed the allegations and subsequently released a blistering rebuke to the mayor's false claim and the scores of threats against school board members that followed. In his resignation statement, Schubert clarified his remarks on ice fishing. He said, "My comments at Tuesday's workshop were made out of concern for our community. What could become of unintended consequences of new legislation based on my prior television news reporting experience," he wrote. "My attempt to inject a bit of dry humour to make a point about this in the midst of a cold, snowy February was grossly misunderstood." Yeah, you don't joke about prostitution. There's nothing funny about it. What an idiot. Craig Schubert. Do you know, a lot of the time when people make these kind of wild accusations, when they get investigated and looked at, it's a bit like when Trump said the election was rigged, and then all of these courts, 61 court cases, federal court, Supreme Court, they all looked at it and they all went, no. And I think we really need to remember that there is this huge difference between people having an opinion and saying that something is wrong or inappropriate or fraudulent or pornographic or whatever, and judges, and just people with common sense who aren't politically motivated, looking at these things and going, no. Because it's often the case, isn't it? You know, you hear a lot of noise from these people, but when it comes to it, they don't have a case. Carl, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. Maybe you can message and let me know where you are. He's given us a wave. You can go to backchannel.tv and send a message that way. It's a rebirth is the headline. Former Italian centre in North Hill to serve Bhutanese immigrants. That's good. And a photograph of 2 Bhutanese immigrants in this beautiful hall with this lovely chandelier. And the headline, it's a rebirth. Possible voter fraud detected in 0.0007% of 2020 Ohio ballots cast. I think they're making a point there, aren't they? Ohio election officials report at least 42 ballots were illegally cast and counted in the 2020 presidential election. While additional referrals will be forthcoming, Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose has said voter fraud is rare in Ohio, though the Republican facing re-election this year has taken to Twitter in recent days to support former President Donald Trump's claim that voter fraud is a serious problem in other states. Stacey says, why can't people just learn to get along? And Marley says, do you do this show every morning? Yes, I do. I know, I can't believe it too. Monday through Friday, between 9 a.m. Pacific and 11 Pacific, or 12 Eastern and 2 Eastern. Every day, except Saturdays and Sundays. It says the former Italian centre in North Hill is undergoing an evolution for a new generation of immigrants in Akron. Som Barley and Yanga Gamer, or maybe that's Judgma, Bhutanese entrepreneurs and brothers-in-law purchased the building last fall and hope to carry on the tradition of providing North Hill community members with a space to hold events and celebrations and convene over a shared meal. The Namaste Centre, as it's renamed, will be open to the public in the spring at 134 East Talmadge Avenue. And, I haven't been to Bhutan. Have you been to Bhutan, Carla? Do you feel like that's somewhere that's on your list? I think you have to trek, don't you? I think you have to trek. You can probably get some of the way. I was talking to someone about the Seychelles the other day, and I was explaining that if you can't really get there either. You know, you have to fly somewhere else and then get a boat or get a seaplane. You can't fly straight into the Seychelles. Seychelles, not seashells. Seychelles. Well, is Bhutan one of the happiest places in the world because you can't get there? I mean, it's kind of uninterrupted. You know, it's not been, the reason that they're happy is because they've basically been left to their own devices. And that people have not infiltrated and also pollinized and colonized their space. You know, it's so nice to kind of have your land remain sacred. Yeah, I mean, these places are kind of perfect. I mean, I've been to a couple of places that are similar. I've been to Mauritius, I've been to Koh Samui, and I've been to Costa Rica. And these are all places that are, you know, far away and supposedly underdeveloped. But tragically, all 3 of those places are starting to see major development. And what you really need, you know, places like Costa Rica only has a tiny little airport. So if you want to get there, you really have to drive. I drove for like a whole 2 days to get to this part of Costa Rica. Took a ferry and, oh man, it was crazy. Okay, that's the Akron Beacon Journal. Let's go to the Oregonian now in Portland. They lead with PDX to bring back its iconic carpet. What? The renovated terminal. This is the airport. I mean, I have to tell you, this story, as crazy as it is that it's made the front page, I'm kind of interested. Portland International Airport made its a timely Valentine's Day announcement. Its much-loved carpet will return when the airport opens its renovated terminal, at least in a few places. The revamped terminal, scheduled to open in 2024, will feature the carpet design with the distinctive X pattern in the meet and greet area outside security exits, as well as a few other locations that airport staffers are keeping under wraps. The geometric design, mostly removed and replaced in 2015, represents symbols that air traffic controllers see on their video terminals at night. The Port of Portland, which operates the airport, installed the carpet in 1988. Its waning days coincided with the Instagram era, and the carpet became a popular backdrop for Portlanders showcasing their travels on arrival or back home. Its popularity nonetheless surprised the airport staff, who gave a press conference in 2015 to announce that the carpet was being replaced due to age and found a room full of reporters. And by that point, the carpet was so threadbare that the maintenance crews used markers to colour in the bare spots, according to a news release from the port. But businesses have capitalised on the popular design since it disappeared from beneath travellers' feet. The pattern can still be found on products throughout Portland, including t-shirts, keychains, packages for chocolate bars, dog bandanas, socks, and vintage sneakers, and of course, in thousands of shoe selfies. So when they say they're putting it back, have they found like bits of it that are not worn that they can use? Or are they actually just reprinting it? I mean, why wouldn't you just remake this carpet? I have to say, it's a lovely carpet. I would love a carpet like that. Like a geometric shapes and... I mean, Instagram really is like the great leveler, isn't it? You know, it's like something as mundane as a carpet can go viral. Stacey says, I've been to Missouri. Well, that's a good thing. I've not been to Missouri. For Asian American women, a harsh duality, it says, across 2 pandemic Olympics set in Asian countries. Asian American women fronting the games have encountered a whiplashing duality. Prized on the global stage for their medal-winning talent, buffeted by the escalating crisis of racist abuse at home, the world's most elite and international sporting event, which pits athletes and countries against each other, underscores along the way that the crude reality that many Asian women face, if only being seen when they have something to offer. It's like Asian American women can't win, says Jeff Yang, author and cultural critic. Asian American female athletes, like most Asian American women in many other spaces, are seen as worthy when they can deliver, and then disposed of otherwise. The issue is playing out at the Beijing Winter Games, the 3rd straight Olympics set in Asia and the 2nd held during the unrelenting global coronavirus crisis, and playing out too during a rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans. This is a massive issue, isn't it? Massive story. And it was made worse, actually, with the pandemic, wasn't it? When Donald Trump kept referring to it as the China virus. And hate crime around the world towards Asians went up. And people weren't even specific about which types of Asians, you know. They couldn't tell the difference between Chinese and any other Asian country, so they just went for everybody. So Koreans and Japanese and all sorts of people were getting it in the neck. Crazy. Okay, let's stick with Oregon, and we're going to go to... Is there anything else on the front of this? No, that's kind of it, really. A bit more coverage of the mega drought. Marley says, do you have any other channels? What do you mean outside of Backchannel? Well, we have Backchannel, which is on 5 days a week, 12 hours a day. Hosts for 2 hours at each time, entertaining you. We also have, we play the Volley News Update, which is the US News Update, which you can listen to. We'll play that in about 20 minutes' time here. You can subscribe to that as well, just wherever you get your podcasts. Search for US News Update. Stacey says on Monday, I get to spend the whole hour with you. Okay, that's great. Marley's got to go back to school. Marley, it's been a pleasure. See you tomorrow, same time. Thank you. Have a good day. Do your best work today. Do your best work. As Melania used to say, be best. A day without an immigrant protest held as lawmakers consider OT bill. We did the story in the other newspaper, but same story. It says nearly 100 people gathered at the Oregon Capitol on Monday, joining other day without immigrant protests around the nation. Nationwide demonstrations called for a labor pause on Valentine's Day to pressure Joe Biden and Congress to pass new immigration reforms and protect immigrants. In Salem, advocates demanded fair treatment for immigrants and passage House Bill 4002, which would extend overtime pay to agricultural workers. And Salem Kaiser teacher staff get $2,250 bonus is the headline. It says at the end of March, most Salem Kaiser public school employees will see an extra $1,250 added to their paychecks. This is after Superintendent Christy Perry announced a recognition fee and retention bonus for both full and part-time employees. The money's coming in March, will be the first of 2 installments. Isn't that great? You can't pay teachers more. You can't. The more you can pay teachers, the better. Such an important job. And finally, have 90,000 people got rental help under Governor Brown? It says during Oregon's Kate Brown's final State of the State address on February 3rd, she listed what she believes are key accomplishments of her 7-year tenure leading the state through a pandemic, historic wildfires, and a contentious political atmosphere. Collaboration, a deep love for Oregon, and our collective determination to continue making our state a better place for everyone have led to our success every step of the way, Brown said. It's wonderful. But have they? Have they? The Statesman Journal is examining some of the governor's statements for accuracy and to provide context. In less than a year, we've helped more than 90,000 Oregons stay safely in their homes, she said. Well, the investigation found that the federal government has allocated more than $46 billion meant to help low-income Americans who've faced financial hardship due to the pandemic pay rent. Oregon Housing and Community Services, a state agency, has received $289 million of that so far for emergency rental help. So it's kind of true. Kind of true. To the Statesman Journal now. Oh, hang on, that was the Statesman Journal. So next must be the Abilene Reporter out of Texas. Happy Valentine's Day. They got you covered. Oh, we did this story yesterday. This was Monday's one. Let's see if there's an alternative. It's still showing us Monday's one. Let's look at Corpus Christi. That's also Monday's one. Orlando Sentinel has Tuesdays. Rent hikes spark fear and frustration. It says Linda Goddard started looking for a new place in August, a retired English teacher who works part-time at Valencia College and UCF. She was told she would have to move from a room in a friend's house in Maitland where she was living. The first place Goddard looked wanted $1,600 a month, which was out of her range, so she kept searching. She said, as I continued to look, the prices went up exponentially. By the time she looked back at that first place, the asking rent had already gone up another $200. They say rent in Metro Orlando rose faster over the past year than any other city in America's Sunbelt, according to CoStar, a real estate analyst. An influx of residents combined with a red-hot housing market is pushing demand for apartment and house rentals to previously unseen levels. It's a trend that's worrying affordable housing advocates, demoralizing renters, and leaving many out in the cold. And then a very sad story regarding Parkland. It says, taking a moment to reflect, Parkland dad climbs crane in protest. Manuel Oliver climbs a crane near the White House urging immediate action against gun violence, and a photograph of people gathering in remembrance during a community commemoration event on the 4th anniversary of the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland on Monday. Hundreds of people gathered at an afternoon wellness event and an evening vigil to mark the 4th anniversary of the tragedy, where a gunman murdered 17 people and injured 17. J&J vaccine, frustrating side effect, confusion, it says. For a few blissful weeks last summer, Ellen Fisher, who's 65, thought she was finally on her way to post-COVID normalcy. After a year and a half of living like a recluse, terrified of the virus and worried that the vaccines to prevent it might trigger that severe flare-up of her autoimmune system, the Jacksonville retiree had held off on COVID vaccination until her doctor said the benefits outweighed the risks. Then he recommended the Johnson & Johnson shot. Continued on page 5. That's a shame. I find it interesting that the J&J shot, which was going to be seen as this kind of one-shot miracle, it's not even being recommended now. And the thing is, if you have a J&J, they're asking you to get a booster from another brand. They're like, yeah. And that defeats the whole object because, of course, a lot of people that took the J&J wanted it because it was not an mRNA vaccine. It was more of a traditional vaccine. And they're like, well, you need an mRNA to be protected from Omicron. And Greenberg sentencing delayed a third time. This is a federal judge on Monday agreed again to delay the sentencing of the date of former Seminole County tax collector Joel Greenberg, who pleaded guilty to sex trafficking and other crimes last May after a request by his attorney. Sentencing was scheduled for March 29, but U.S. District Judge Gregory Presnell wrote in his order that a further continuance of Greenberg's sentencing is in the interest of justice. And then finally, manatee death toll rises in Indian River. This is the cruelest of Florida's manatee killing fields, can be surprisingly serene, as on a recent morning thaw from a cold snap. Breezes toyed with fickle and calm pelicans, plunged in among dolphins to feast on fish, and seagulls sunbathed, making no disturbance at all. The remains of a young manatee, decomposed on a beach, and dead baby manatees drifting mostly submerged with its right shoulder down and left flipper folded, suggested the pose of sleeping on its side. I mean, this is becoming a huge thing, isn't it? This photograph here of a dead baby manatee floating less than 200 yards from Florida Power and Light Company's electric plant near Titusville. My mistake. So there we go. That's how that one is looking. We're doing pretty well here. We're speeding through these today. The Tampa Bay Times is next. And they lead with widow testifies. Nicole Alston is the first witness in the theatre shooting trial. And what's the cost of free tests? The US government says stays mum on detail of 3 contracts for COVID antigen tests. Yeah, I thought about this. I thought this was kind of interesting. I received my COVID tests, by the way. I thought they'd been stolen, but they eventually arrived. And I did think, who's paying for these? It says the rapid tests that Joe Biden promised in December for every American household has become arriving in earnest in mailboxes and on doorsteps. The surge of COVID-19 infections spurred demand over-the-counter antigen tests during the holidays. Clinics were overwhelmed with people seeking tests, and the new off-the-shelf brands were nearly impossible to find at pharmacies and even online. Prices for some test kits cracked the $100 mark, and the government vowed that its purchase could provide the tests faster and cheaper, so Americans, simply by swabbing at home, could quell the spread of COVID. So the Defense Department organized the bidding and announced in mid-January, after a limited competitive process, that 3 companies were awarded contracts totaling nearly $2 billion for 380 million over-the-counter antigen tests to be delivered by March 14. The much-touted purchase was the latest tranche in trillions of dollars in public spending to the pandemic. How much is the government paying for each test, and what were the terms of the agreements? The government won't say yet, even though by law this information should be available. The cost, and more importantly the rate per test, will demonstrate Who is getting the best deal for protection in these COVID times? The consumer or the corporation? I went into CVS yesterday and that they're selling a new brand of test that I've not seen before in a much smaller box. 2 tests. It's 1 test. And they're selling it for $9.99. Which means if you bought 2, that would be $20. And previously a pack of 2 in the Binax brand was $23.99. So these are $4 less if you buy 2. But it's still too much money. They should be free. Totally free. Or just a couple of bucks. Scars do heal, but they don't go away, is the headline here. 4 years after the massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, closure is elusive. Yes, in a darkened stall, Jade Muller reached out and placed her hand on the soft, warm belly of a miniature horse named Precious. Muller was breathing fast and shallow on the verge of a panic attack. Precious' side rose and fell much more slowly, and Muller struggled to breathe in sync. As the musty smell of the tiny horse filled her nostrils, Muller's breathing slowed, her anxiety eased, and with that came release. For the first time since she saw the black barrel of a gun poke its way into her freshman English classroom at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School 4 years ago, wounding 5 of her classmates and killing 3, her pain lessened, at least for a moment. There's a photograph of students practicing on Friday at the dance theatre at Parkland, where Jamie Guttenberg, one of 17 victims, had danced. And still nothing. I mean, there's literally been nothing, no change since the Parkland shooting. You know, no change of rules. And the reason, of course, is because the Conservatives won't sign up to anything. The National Rifle Association lobby the Conservatives, and, you know, you end up with just a stalemate every time. Every single time. Charles has joined us, Steve has joined us, Ace has joined us, John has joined us. Welcome, all of you. Charles is in Virginia, and Ace, I don't know where you are. Doesn't say. Steve doesn't say where you are. But the point is, you're here, and that's all that matters. You can message me if you don't have the ability to with your current device. Just go to backchannel.tv on any browser, and you can send a message to the show that way. That's backchannel.tv. Anything else here? Florida fails to pay children's health claims, it says, on the front of the Tampa Bay Times. Florida failed for nearly 3 months to pay tens of thousands of healthcare claims for the state's sickest and neediest children due to software glitches blamed on the corporate merger of its 2 largest payments vendors, officials and executives said. Families with critically ill children who relied on Medicaid-paid health providers were stranded in some cases. A father in Lake Worth was forced to cut back his contractor work to remain home and care for his son when payments stopped. Another in Ocala said the company had helped care for her 15-year-old disabled son temporarily shut down because of the payment problems. So there we are. Wonderful. Tampa Bay Times. Oh, we've got a couple more Texas ones here. Hang on, let's have a look. So this one first is the Abilene Reporter News. Fashion show marks history and style, and an image of history through fashion celebrated on Friday at the Abilene Women's Club Foundation. And these women looking wonderful in their traditional dress. I'll be sure to be going to that fashion show. Gun control groups press Biden is the headline. 4 years after 17 people were gunned down at Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, families and gun control advocates are pressing Joe Biden to do more to address gun violence. Same story, different paper. And Chamber names new head of Convention and Visitors Bureau as well. This is the Abilene Chamber of Commerce. Announced Robert Lopez will be the vice president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And he looks very happy about it in this photograph. That's good, isn't it? And one more for Texas, and that is the Caller Times from Corpus Christi. A sliver of hope on Ukraine front, and another photograph of those 2 or 3 Ukrainian National Guards on their way to the front line. And oh, it's a beautiful photograph. Carla's saying what an amazing photo it is. It really is. You can see the fear, the sadness, the anticipation, and the nerves, I guess. Being unnerved at the idea that, are you being driven to your death? Because I guess that's what it must be like if you're conscripted, or if you're in the military and you don't see active service and you do all your training, and then eventually you get the call and it's like, is this it? This is what I'm trained for, but is this it? And then there's a story about county selects Houston area company to do demolition of Bob Hall Pier. They've advised the commission to accept a bid from a Houston company rather than a local one on the Bob Hall demolition project. The court voted during its February 9 meeting to reverse the decision to have a Corpus Christi-based marine construction company, J.M. Davison, conduct the demolition. Instead, they've selected a Houston area-based company, which had provided the lowest price tag for the job by about almost $100,000. Never take the cheapest quote. Everyone knows that. The Santa Monica Pier is wonderful, yeah. I have spent a lot of time on the Santa Monica Pier, and I look at it a lot because I go nearby and I look at it from a distance, and it is a lovely pier. But I have to say, I've got, since, with terrorism in America, especially here in Los Angeles, I do think about domestic terrorism, and I think, where would people want to kind of, cause the most harm? Because, LA doesn't have any kind of centers. And I was thinking it would probably go for the airport. They'd probably go for somewhere like Santa Monica Pier. And they did actually arrest somebody who had a major plot to do a mass killing on Santa Monica Pier. And I almost predicted it. I remember being there a few years ago and saying to friends, I don't feel safe here. Something about it just doesn't feel safe. And I made everybody leave. They were very sweet to leave because I was having a bit of a panic attack. And then literally 3 days later, there was a story in the newspaper that said the police had foiled a plot. They'd foiled a plot for this kind of domestic terrorist attack on Santa Monica Pier. Maybe you can look it up and tell me when it was. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit psychic, I guess. I mean, I don't really believe in that, but maybe I am. But it was the police foiling a plot for some guy who was planning some terrorist action, domestic terrorism, an American person, on Santa Monica Pier. And so I was, my instinct, always trust your instinct. If you feel something, you're probably going to be right. That's my guess. If you feel it, you're probably going to be right. Okay, where are we at now? Let's have a look. That's the Caller Times. That was our last one. So let's see. Oh, we're going to talk about Sandy Hook, actually. This is the company that made a rifle used in one of the deadliest school shootings in the U.S. has settled with the victims of families. The families of victims, I mean. The settlement from Remington Arms comes in response to a lawsuit brought by the families of 9 of 26 victims on the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre. The case mounts the first time a gunmaker has been held accountable for a mass shooting. The families say Remington was negligent. The details of the settlement have not yet been disclosed, although the families are expected to comment further at a news conference later on Tuesday. Last July, Remington, the oldest gunmaker in the U.S., offered $33 million to each of the families, falling far short of the $225 million they'd sought in court. During court hearings in February, attorneys for the family said that total punitive claims could possibly exceed $1 billion. And in their lawsuit, the families of 5 adults and 4 children who died in the shooting argued that the company marketed its weapons to high-risk and potentially unstable individuals such as Sandy Hook gunman Adam Lanza. Remington, which was founded in 1816 and is based in North Carolina, has denied the allegations. 20 children and 6 teachers were killed at the 2012 shooting in Connecticut, shocking the U.S., a country already familiar with mass shooting and gun crimes in school. And despite the deaths of young children aged 6 and 7, no new national gun control laws were passed in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting, or the Parkland shooting, or any of the shootings. But it's kind of good that the gunmaker was held accountable, because in my view, that really is like the start where gun makers might realize that it's not profitable to be gun makers anymore because you're just going to get sued for shootings. Davies joined us. Stacy says, sometimes you can't always trust your instincts because that can lead to trouble. Yes, but, good trouble, as John Lewis used to say. Good trouble. Remember that? I mean, I have Carla, here's a story you might not know about me. I know I like shocking you with these stories during the show. But I was held at gunpoint once. Genuinely held at gunpoint. And it was in all the newspapers. And I was held at gunpoint by the SAS because they thought I was an IRA bomber. It was a case of mistaken identity. And I was arrested in the middle of the night. And I was put in a prison cell overnight while they investigated what had gone on. And the whole thing was a mistake. But it was very traumatizing for me. Very traumatizing. Because I was held at gunpoint for about half an hour by 4 officers all dressed in black, like SAS gear, holding semi-automatic weapons with those laser sights on them, with the red beam coming out on the back of my head. And it was in a hotel room at like 3 o'clock in the morning. The place got turned upside down. They evacuated the whole hotel and then they came in and got me. And it was it was terrifying. But obviously I wasn't charged or anything because I was just minding my own business. But it was an accident. But the point is, oh yeah, when I was being marched out of the hotel in handcuffs and they were slowly letting the punters back into their rooms, people were shouting really quite obscene things at me because they were told that there was potentially an IRA person in the hotel. And they were shouting really vile things and spitting. It was quite grim. But so I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of a firearm. I wasn't shot at, fortunately. But when I did inquire, they said, "You do realize you could have been killed." I mean, that was what these guys were there to do. It took them like 3 or 4 hours to gather enough officers to make this arrest. They had about 40 officers in the end, SWAT teams and all sorts of people. And they had snipers on the roof of the building opposite. And they really thought this was going to be one of the big arrests, It just turned out to be me. But it's like, I hadn't done anything wrong. But it's just, sometimes they get it wrong. And it's hard, because then I feel like I'm caught up in something that I had nothing to do with. A case of mistaken identity, that's what it is. And it does happen that in the cases of mistaken identities, people do get shot. Yeah. So, I have very strong opinions about gun control, partly because I know what it's like to be on the end of the barrel, or the wrong end of the barrel, I should say. But I also recognize that there is no good that comes from guns. When people say, "Oh, I need them for hunting or shooting," it's like, you don't need anything for hunting or shooting. You don't need to be doing that. Go buy your meat in a supermarket. So I have a very black and white attitude to firearms, but I also recognize that I didn't grow up in America, and therefore if you did grow up in America, then this is a very salient point because culturally guns are very much part of the culture in America. It was the Wild West. This is how states evolved, some more than others. And so while some states are rolling back these regulations, other states are trying to do more. But fundamentally, you'll never take guns away from Americans. And anybody who says you will. I remember when Piers Morgan, do you remember him? That horrific British so-called journalist came and took over. Was it Larry King's show that he took over? And he basically took it upon himself to try and tell Americans that they needed to give up their guns, and it was like, Piers, you are definitely operating outside of your pay grade here. And he was paid a lot of money. And in the end, he quit, didn't he? Piers Morgan kind of ends up quitting everything or gets fired. You know, the guy can't hold down a job really because he's too volatile. Well, yeah, Piers Morgan, I think... Emily's just joined us. Hi, Emily. Welcome. Stacey has to go. Thank you, Stacey, for staying so long. Michelle is with us. Davey and John as well. And Charles and Ace and Steve. Thank you for hanging out here on Backchannel. I don't know that Americans would have really committed Piers Morgan to memory, necessarily. You know, I mean, I think there was this scandal over him calling for this gun control. And, of course, the people that do remember him are the right-wing brigade who basically didn't want anybody to say the words gun control out loud, let alone a British person. Oh, yeah, he was a judge on America's Got Talent. That's right. He's just a very good operator. He's very well connected. He's very clued up. You know, he spent years as the editor of a tabloid newspaper in England, which is why he kind of got to know everybody. But to me, he's just a bad person. You know, he seems to kind of has made a living just like getting off on other people's misfortune. And I just don't really respect that, especially when it comes to like celebrity and all that stuff. Okay, we're going to listen to the US News Update now. It's a 2-minute podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts, and it's part of the one of the strands that we offer here at Volley. So here it comes. Enjoy. It's Tuesday, February 15. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. US federal judges were the target of more than 4,500 threats and other inappropriate communications last year, the head of the US Marshals Services said on Monday, adding that his office is concerned about the rise of domestic extremism in America. Federal law enforcement officials have sounded alarm bells about a growing tide of threats posed by white supremacists and anti-government activists, many of whom have touted former Republican President Donald Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. Earlier this year, Attorney General Merrick Garland launched a task force aimed at combating threats targeting state election workers and volunteers, an effort that so far has led to 2 criminal cases. Garland has also instructed the FBI to work with local officials to monitor an increase in threats to school boards, which have faced an onslaught of criticism over issues ranging from mask mandates to the unproven teaching of critical race theory. The threats to judges were varied and in some cases came from disgruntled defendants. Meanwhile, the father of a teenager who was killed in Florida's Parkland High School shooting marked the 4th anniversary of the massacre on Monday by climbing a construction crane near the White House and demanding the Biden administration take action on gun violence. Biden said in a statement on Monday that his administration was working to reduce gun crime by curbing the number of untraceable guns, cracking down on gun dealers who violate the law, and promoting safe firearms storage. Your daily US News Update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is. That's the US News Update. It's a little taster of what's going on across America, and you can download it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel. This is the Anthony Davis Show. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning. Got lots to get through still. We've been looking at the morning papers. We've been discussing gun rights, gun control off the back of the Parkland shooting and the Stony Douglas shooting. Matthew's joined us. Hello, Matthew. Emily as well. Michelle, Davey, John, Charles, Steve, Ace, Carl as well. Marley was here earlier. Braulio, Joanna, Andrea, Wayne, Howie, James, and Stacey. who had to leave after an hour. So yeah, you can join in. All you have to do is jump onto backchannel.tv. You can message me there and we can chat depending on what it is that you want to talk about, or maybe you just want to react to one of the things that we're discussing in these reviews that we're looking at. Let's talk about Prince Andrew. He's the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II. He's her son, of course, her second son, Charles Andrew, and Edward. Oh, and Anne, of course, is in there as well. She's like the second oldest. So it goes Charles, Anne, Andrew, Edward. So the Queen of England has 4 children. And anyway, so this is Prince Andrew, who's always known as a little bit of a philanderer. You know, he was married to Sarah Ferguson. She was the redhead. They have 2 children. Anyway, I don't know why I'm going into that detail. He's settled the civil sexual assault case that was brought against him in the US by Virginia Giuffre. Court documents show Miss Giuffre had been suing the Duke of York, claiming he sexually assaulted her on 3 occasions when she was 17. Allegations he's repeatedly denied. Now, let's just go back in the history. Now, this is all Jeffrey Epstein's world. Do you remember Jeffrey Epstein, of course, who was recently arrested in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, friend of Donald Trump, one of these millionaire guys who didn't really have a job, but for some reason he was wealthy and successful and very well connected. And, is a socialite. And he dated Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently on trial. Well, she just got done, didn't she? She just got convicted of being his accomplice as they trafficked people and sexually assaulted people. And the guy was a paedophile. So he committed suicide, or he was suicided in prison a year or so ago. And now Virginia Giuffre, who was photographed famously with Prince Andrew with his arm around her in an apartment in a street in London. The street was Kinnerton Street, London SW1, which is where Ghislaine Maxwell had an apartment. He claimed that was a photoshopped photograph. She's like, of course it wasn't. We were seeing each other. I was forced to see you. So she always said, this isn't about the money, but I want to bring the civil suit against you. And it's obvious why he settled out of court, because it's very embarrassing for the prince. The prince has already been stripped of many of his titles, of his charitable roles, of his relationship with the royal family. The Queen has said, go and be a civilian. Don't sully the House of Windsor. Well, the Duke's representative said he had no comment beyond the court statement. He said the court document said he would make a substantial donation to Miss Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. It added that Prince Andrew has never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character, and that he has recognized she had suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. In the document, the Duke also pledged to demonstrate his great regret for his association with the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein by supporting the fight against evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims. He also commended the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. I mean, this is just like, talk about backtracking. If you consider the fact that Prince Andrew just denied, pays the settlement. I mean, it's an admission of guilt, isn't it? That's all it is. He faced a public hearing this autumn coming over allegations he sexually abused the American woman 3 times when she was just 17 and while she was the victim of trafficking. Orchestrated by billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. The Duke has always strenuously denied the allegations. He did a torturous interview with a British journalist called Emily Maitlis on the BBC about a year and a half ago. It was torturous. He made up all this stuff. Oh, well, that can't have been me because I don't sweat. Ever since I went to war and I came back, I have this condition where I don't sweat. He said I couldn't have been there that night because I was having pizza. And he talked about this specific pizza restaurant that he was at with his daughters. He made up all of this stuff. It was just obviously made up. The guy is a really bad liar. But the problem is that people from the royal family have been surrounded by yes people their whole lives. Sycophants, ladies in waiting, staff, security people. They really are not... They're just not used to being held to account. They've had a charmed existence. They don't have to pay for anything. Everything is just brought to them. And so, we find ourselves looking to someone like this and thinking, well, you're basically living in a parallel universe, this kind of wealthy space. The problem is that he's now been cut off from these the financial support of the House of Windsor. And hopefully he's going to have to pay up so much money that he's going to be left with not much for himself, and it's going to hurt him. And maybe that's why Virginia Giuffre decided to accept this deal, because it was so much money being donated to her charity and various charities that it's going to hurt him. Yeah, no, I absolutely think she did the right thing in accepting the cash settlement. I think it's the right thing because nobody wants to air their dirty laundry in public. She's been through this so many times. She also herself signed a silencing agreement with Epstein a while ago to say that she could never talk because he also paid her out for something. She has got a small payment and she had to sign some kind of NDA. So this is a civil case, which is why it's being done in this way, not a criminal case. But no, I think that this was definitely going to be the outcome. But here's another question. The Duke of York doesn't work, right? He doesn't really have a job. He does charitable work, obviously, and he spent some time in the Royal Navy and the like. So this money is really coming from his allowance that comes from Her Majesty the Queen. And where does Her Majesty the Queen's money come from? Is that old money, family money, or is that taxpayers' money? Because, of course, the British taxpayer pays Her Majesty the Queen a large sum. It's like, what is it, like $100 million a year, or £100 million a year? It's something or it might be £200 million a year. It works out about 35 pence per person per week in the UK. Anyway, you could argue that it's the British public that are paying the settlement to Virginia Giuffre via Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. You could make that connection and say this is not Andrew's money. The guy doesn't have a job. The guy is living on the public purse, and the public purse belongs to the public, and therefore he had sex illegally. He abused this person, and now the British public are bailing him out. You could look at it like that. I'm not saying I am, but you could look at it that way. If you choose. I wonder if the Queen is looking at it like that. I wonder if she's thinking, because I don't think of the Queen as being a greedy person or a financially inappropriate person. I think she understands her responsibility. She's given her life to the people of Britain. The woman is 96 and she still does like 17 engagements a day. Nobody works harder than that woman. She is relentless. And yet, she's good value for money. In my opinion, she's good value for money. But the Duke of York, not really. Yeah, no one really knows how much the Duke of York has got. He's such a fishy character. I do recommend, if you're interested, there's a very good show on Netflix called The Windsors. It's a send-up. It's like a comedy show called The Windsors. And my best friend in London plays Prince Andrew in The Windsors. And they recently did it in the theatre, in the West End. So, if you want a kind of a slightly lighter version of the royal family, then look at The Windsors on Netflix. It's very funny. Margaret's joined us, Matthew as well, Ryan, welcome, Andrea, and Amazon joined us as well. Danar, welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining Backchannel. It's Tuesday, the 15th, the day after Valentine's. I should ask you how your Valentine's Day went, really, last night. I wonder, the Duke of York, his Valentine's went very well. He ended up paying a multi-million-dollar settlement to Virginia Giuffre, so she had a good Valentine's as well. But how did yours go? Mine was very quiet. I stayed home. But maybe you had more of a celebration. Maybe something happened that is worthy of a mention and you'd like to share with us. Maybe you have a special mention that you'd like me to say for your loved one. Maybe there's someone special in your life, and off the back of last night's romance, maybe you just want me to kind of say hi. Ryan says hi, by the way. Ryan, hello in Washington. Great to see you. I can't see you, but you can see me. But I'm pleased that you're here. What a pleasure. Ryan, did you go out last night or did you stay home? Did someone look after you or did you look after someone? You don't have to tell me any of these answers. This is kind of rhetorical. You know, I just want to know that you were okay. I just want to know that you were not on your own. I just want to know that everything's okay. Oh, you did a barbecue for your family. Well, that is romantic. That is romantic. You know? Well done. It must be freezing there, though. Isn't it really cold in Washington right now? Like, how can you barbecue if it's like minus 20? Is the only reason you did a barbecue is so everyone could stand around and keep warm? Was it just to save on the heating costs? Matthew, first time on the show. Welcome, Matthew. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome to get in touch as well, anytime. You can message me at backchannel.tv. If you have an Echo Show device, then you just have to wake it up and say the word say, and then your message. So you could go, Echo, say, I did a barbecue just to keep warm. Ryan says yes. Yes. So we've been discussing a couple of things. We've been looking at gun control off the back of the school shootings, Prince Andrew settling out of court and paying Virginia Giuffre an undisclosed sum. And, you know, this is, again, you know, it's another example of how the rich seem to get away with it time and time again. And the thing is, when they pay out of court, when they make a settlement, it doesn't hurt them like it would hurt you and I. Do you know what I mean? They have enough to weather it. A statement filed to the court said Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew have reached an out-of-court settlement. The parties will file a stipulated dismissal upon Miss Giuffre's receipt of the settlement, the sum of which is not being disclosed. Prince Andrew intends to make a substantial donation to Miss Giuffre's charity in support of victim rights. Andrew never intended to malign Miss Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she has suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. It also says it is known that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years. Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. And he pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims. Oh yeah, I mean, you got to remember, Virginia Giuffre was 17 when all this was kicking off, you know, and so her life has been maligned by this from the very beginning. You know, she was barely an adult, and in fact, back in January, the Duke's lawyers submitted 11 reasons why the case against him should be dismissed, saying he demanded a trial by jury to prove his innocence. Representatives for Andrew said he would not be expanding beyond the statement filed in court. When asked for further comment, Virginia Giuffre's lawyer said, "I believe this event speaks for itself. The news will come as a huge relief to the royal family, who feared the scandal would overshadow the Queen's Platinum Jubilee." I wonder if the Queen said, "Look, I'll give you the money, just for goodness sake, settle and just let it go. Just let it go." And there's a photograph of Prince Andrew here looking a lot like my friend who plays him in The Windsors on Netflix. Definitely worth watching. It's a very funny character. The Windsors is genius. It's just a very, very funny show. It basically takes all of their extreme characteristics and puts it up front, Hi, Robin. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. We're discussing Prince Andrew, the Queen's son, settling in the sex abuse case. The senior royals legal team has questioned the legality of the case after terms of a previous settlement with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein came to light, but that appeal was rejected in January after a fractious court hearing, paving the way for a full hearing in which Andrew could be forced to testify. Anyway, not anymore. Not anymore. He has settled out of court. I wonder how much it is. I wonder how much he has. I wonder what he's worth. It's millions, obviously, but I wonder. Air Miles Andy, that's right. Yeah, he's one of those kind of slippery characters that's managed to have quite a nice life and get away with murder. Anyway, I don't really like him. I like Prince Charles. I've met Prince Charles a couple of times, and I quite like him. I think he's a good guy. A little bit misunderstood, but I think he's a good guy. Queen Camilla, of course, as we now know, she's going to get the royal title of being Queen Consort if and when Prince Charles ascends to the throne. And little Prince Edward, well, actually, he stands more chance now of becoming king, doesn't he? Because Andrew looks like he's out of the picture. Although Queen Anne could have been in there as well. That would have been fun. I would have loved Anne to have been on the throne. Would have loved that. Anyway, Charles is the next one up. And he's pushing, what is he? He's like 70, 74? He has the biggest fingers I've ever seen. Have you ever seen Prince Charles's fingers? The biggest fingers you will ever see on a human man, Prince Charles. They're like sausages. I shook his hand and I was like, wow, sausage fingers. And if you do a search on Prince Charles' sausage fingers, you'll see a whole bunch of photographs of a man with the biggest... He's 70 what? Just 70? Oh, 73. Well, he has 73 sausage fingers. I'm very good at guessing ages, and I've always been good at guessing numbers, yeah. I'm not very good at adding them up, but I'm very good at guessing them. Just a reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Hayley and Alison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their one-star cinema review, or Live Every Day with Liv Harrison, live from Texas, celebrating the little things in life with plenty of coffee. And also the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, that's your pal Hal. His program is next. We'll catch up with him and have a conversation with him at about 11:15 and find out what's happening in his show in just a little while. Okay, let's move on with some more of our conversations. Donald Trump's accounting firm has cut ties with the former president and said a decade of financial reports should no longer be relied upon. That's right, the firm called Mazars, they sent a letter to the Trump organization that it could not stand behind Trump's statements, statements that it had prepared for Mr. Trump from 2011 through 2020. But Mazars said it had not concluded they contained material discrepancies. So how does that work? If you can't stand by them, but they don't contain material discrepancies, something can't be right. The letter was revealed in a court filing as part of a fraud investigation into the Trump organization. In the filing, New York Attorney General Letitia James repeated her request that the former president and his daughter Ivanka give evidence under oath. Her office has already questioned Mr. Trump's son, Eric. Ms. James last month said her civil inquiry into the Trump family firm had uncovered what she claimed was significant evidence of misleading business practices, including overvaluing certain assets. And that's really been the biggest thing, isn't it? That by overvaluing these assets, that it enabled the Trump organization to leverage much larger loans. So they took in much more money because, all these companies, they borrow, they don't really have much cash. They borrow and they leverage based on the valuation of their property or their business or whatever. In its letter, Mazars wrote that the findings of Ms. James's investigation had contributed to the conclusion that the statement should no longer be relied upon. The firm also said it performed its work in accordance with professional standards and compiled the reports based on information provided by the Trump organization. It says, while we have not concluded that various financial statements as a whole contain material discrepancies based upon the totality of the circumstances, we believe our advice to you to no longer rely upon those financial statements is appropriate, the letter said. I mean, this whole thing stinks. It just stinks. And, time and time again, Trump is like claiming that everybody else is a baddie and he's a goodie. And yet all the evidence suggests otherwise. All the evidence suggests that this guy is just a serial criminal. And in fact, the long-term, that's right, it was the former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Joyce Vance, explained, that's a bait stamp. When documents are turned over in litigation, each is assigned a sequential number to protect the integrity of production. So Mazars has turned over at least this many pages of documents. Wow. So one of the numbers is 500,52538, which means that they could have handed over 525,838 files to prosecutors. Oh man, that's a lot of files. Letitia James, who cited the company's statements of financial condition in her probe of Trump Organization, included the letter in her Monday filing. The withdrawal marks a stunning departure for the firm that's been at the center of years' worth of lawsuits regarding Trump's financial information, including a fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Adding to the sting, the firm noted that Donald and Melania's returns are due on Tuesday and that they're facing a filing penalty of $10,000 per return if they miss the deadline. They don't care about that. Trump is so used to paying people off, paying fines, paying this, paying that. It's like that's how he just relies on the fact that there'll be a little bit of profit left over. Matthew, hello. Welcome to Backchannel. Thank you for joining us. William's here. Robin's here. Have you met Ryan? Say hi to Ryan. Here's Andrea. Have you said hi to Dinar? Dinar's here as well. Emily's joined us. We're all sitting around. Davey's over there. John's back there. Charles is sitting there. Steve's with us as well. Ace is right in front of me, legs crossed. This is the Backchannel morning show. I mean, this is how we spend our mornings together. You can come back tomorrow and we can do the same thing again. We just hang out together. Stacey had to go and a couple of people had to leave. Carl was here right at the beginning. So was Wayne and Marley, who was in and out before he had to go to school. I mean, these are the people that we call friends now. This is how we do it here. We'll talk to your pal Hal in a few minutes' time and find out what's happening on his show. He's here at around 11 o'clock, which is 2 o'clock Eastern. The letter ending the long-term financial relationship comes amid an investigation where the Attorney General is already accusing the company of using fraudulent or misleading asset valuations to obtain a host of economic benefits. It tells the company that its statements of financial condition, which the Trump Organization in the past has provided to the media, to media members and lenders alike, can no longer be relied upon. And lawyers for the Attorney General's office submitted the letter in a court filing as they seek to compel Trump, the firm, and the Trump family to comply with subpoenas seeking documents and testimony. So interesting. I mean, I don't know. This guy is he's permanently on the run. He's permanently on the run. And he just thinks, he's just not used to, again, it's a bit like Prince Andrew, isn't it? It's exactly the same story. You're dealing with somebody who has never been hurt, he's never heard the word no. He's only ever been surrounded by sycophants, employees, family members, or, people on the payroll, people that tell him what he wants to hear. And we've heard this about Trump. We've heard this about Prince Andrew. It's like, you are really surrounding yourselves with the wrong people. You want to hear from people who criticize you, who give you a reality check, who remind you that you are not all powerful and that there are consequences to your actions, whether it be in the sexual abuse case of Virginia Giuffre or whether it be in Donald Trump's multitude of crimes, including a violent insurgency and a coup against the United States. Isabel, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. It's 10:30 here on the West Coast, 1:30 Eastern. The Trump Organization did not respond specifically to a question about whether the accounting firm concluded it could end up in legal conflict with a former client over past statements of financial condition, which have become a key area of James's investigation. However, a Trump Organization spokesperson said, while we are disappointed that Mazars has chosen to part ways, their February 9 letter confirms that after conducting a subsequent review of all prior statements of financial condition, Mazars' work was performed in accordance with all applicable accounting standards and principles, and that such statements of financial condition do not contain any material discrepancies. This confirmation effectively renders the investigations by the DA and the AG moot. No, that's not the case, because what the accountancy firm is saying is that we have received all the information from the Trumps, and we have worked with that information, and we have published it, and there's no discrepancies there. What the AG and the DA are saying is that they are looking at not the information that the Trumps supplied to the accountancy firm and said, make this look good, but what really happened. There's huge discrepancies according to Letitia James. She's totally got their number. I'm a big fan of Letitia James. I just think the problem with Letitia James is she's got too much of a mouth on her. I think she should have kept quiet. And you know, the Trumps now are going after her because they're like, she's a Democrat. She's said, you know, she was going to bring our family down no matter what. And the reality is that, yeah, she is a Democrat, but that should not be the point. The point is that she's the AG. And consequently, she should be able to prosecute anybody who's committed a crime. You know, she wants to bring criminals to justice. That's her job. It's just unfortunate that she's gone on TV so many times and boasted about bringing down the Trump crime family. So it makes it sound like she's prejudiced. But she doesn't care because she's got the evidence, she's got the facts, and she knows that the law will see her good. But I just don't think that that's the way you should conduct yourself if you're in high office. Because it gives people like the Trump family ammunition to say, well, you're not a serious person because, you know, the way you treated us. And that, unfortunately, is, you know, where it's at now. It is Black History Month, so maybe we could just spend 15 minutes looking at Dr. Margaret James Strickland Collins. Because often legends go unrecognised for their achievements in science and the betterment of society. In the case of Margaret Collins, it has been 25 years since her passing, and except for appreciation by a small cadre of termite experts, her contributions to entomology have received scant notice. However, her work and legacy have stood the test of time. And even today, she's considered and often cited as the definitive source for differences in toleration and resistance to drying among species of termites. At her core, Margaret was a field biologist, and she demonstrated it through her travels and termite collection trips to a dozen countries. Her long and illustrious career included publishing of scientific papers, tenured faculty positions, and service as a curator of the termite collection at the National Museum of Natural History, Smithsonian Institution in Washington, District of Columbia. Margaret achieved many firsts during her life. She was the first African-American female to be awarded a PhD involving etymology at a major university. In fact, she was the first woman graduate student of the legendary isopterist and professor of zoology, Alfred E. Emerson. And her passion for termites, I mean, I love that I'm saying this out loud without smiling. Her passion for termites remains highly visible in her published work. Her passion for her family and her strong support of civil rights for women and African Americans were less visible to those, except to those who knew her personally. Do you know, they do something amazing with termites here in Los Angeles. I'm sure they do it across the wider US. I don't know if you've ever seen it in England, Carla, but when they cover a house, and the house gets checked for termites, they cover the house in a giant bubble. They bubble the house, It's a huge canvas covering. They cover the whole house. So the family moves out and they cover the whole house in this giant bubble. So if you drive through the streets of Los Angeles, you'll occasionally see a house covered in a multicolored canvas thing. And it's got air blown into it, right? So it's full of air. And it's a cover that covers an entire house. And then they pump in the termite pesticide, I presume, to kill all the termites. So people use the phrase, "Oh, you can't come over, I'm having my house termited." You should look at they're giant balloons that cover the entire house. I've never seen it anywhere in England. Maybe we don't get termites. I guess that's because we don't really build houses out of wood in England anymore. You know, we build houses out of brick and concrete and steel. But in America, houses are built out of wood, especially here in Earthquake County. And so people get their houses tented. They call them tents. Termite tents. And they look ridiculous. Yeah, it's a fumigation tent. And it covers the entire house. And if you thought that it wasn't possible to get a tent that's that big, you thought wrong. I don't know how they do it. But apparently it gets rid of the termites. You fumigate the whole house with a tent. It keeps the fumes in. Nobody lives there. They do it for a week. Then you move back in and the termites have gone. I wonder how much it costs. Sounds like it would be very expensive. Yeah, they look like pajamas. They're the weirdest colours, these things. They're like circus tents. So we've been talking about Margaret Collins. Dr. Margaret James Strickland Collins. 25 years since she died. And she is Queen of the Termites. So we're just looking at tenting as well. But after completing her thesis, Differences in Toleration of Drying Among Species of Termites, Margaret would become one of the first African-American women to receive an advanced degree related to zoology and entomology. The publication of her thesis is considered her seminal work and is often cited. And during the next 30 years, Margaret would hold professional titles with tenure at 3 universities that included Howard University in Washington, District of Columbia, Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Federal City College in Washington, District of Columbia. She also held university administrative titles as well as being president of the Entomology Society of Washington. She retired from Howard University in 1983, went on to accept a senior research position at the Smithsonian Institute's National Museum of Natural History in Washington, District of Columbia that same year. I mean, this woman is amazing. She's amazing. She died in 1996 while conducting field research in Little Cayman on the Cayman Islands. She authored or co-authored more than 40 research publications, mostly on the biogeography, physiology, chemical defenses and taxonomy of termites. And she's best known as a world authority on the termite diversity in the Caribbean islands and Guyana. And the collection maintained in the Smithsonian Institute still bears her name. What does a termite actually look like? Oh, I can see one now. Oof, it's disgusting. I'm looking at one that's native to the West Indies. Oh, they named one after her. Oh, wow, that's exciting. They've named one in honor of Margaret Collins. They've named a termite after her. That must be like the ultimate... That's better than winning the Presidential Medal of Freedom. To have a termite named after you. At the California Science Center, which is next door to the Natural History Museum here in Los Angeles, they have a room for kids that's like got like little cabinets full of termites and cockroaches, and they're designed in like a house, like a kitchen. So it's all under the kitchen. You can see what kind of creatures might be living in your kitchen. And I've had a good like close-up look at these huge cockroaches. They're like this big. And I'm like, how we live with those? You know, they really are. You can't even tread on them. You can't even like crunch them. They're huge. They're like big beetles. Talking of big beetles, my least favorite creature that I've discovered since moving to Los Angeles. Hi, Charles, by the way. Welcome. And Chris as well says, hi. Chris, welcome. Great to see you. And Correct is back. Welcome, Correct. What's the name of that huge flying beetle that they have here in LA that flies at your head? Boom, because it's blind. It's gigantic. It's like a shiny green and blue, purpley. It's gigantic. And it's like my least favorite part of living in Los Angeles is these huge things, and they fly at your head. And they're blind, and they're idiots. They're just idiots. I really don't enjoy that side of living here. But I think that they're native to Los Angeles. And I've embarrassed myself a few times. Yeah, it's a huge beetle. But what's the name of it? Isn't it called a... It's a gigantic coloured beetle. Let me see if I can look it up, because I know what it looks like. I'll look up huge beetle LA. Oh, it says George Harrison. Hang on. It's the fig eater. What do they call it? It's a June beetle, I think. Hang on. I hate this thing. I think it's a June bug. I think they call it a June bug. It's like a fig beetle or a June bug or something like that. But it flies. Oh, this one's calling it the California. This calling it the Japanese beetle. It says the adult beetle is broadly oval. It's about 13 millimeters long, half an inch by 0.25. The body is bright metallic green. The legs are a darker green. The wing covers a coppery brown, do not quite extend to the end of the abdomen. 2 small tufts of white hair just behind the wing covers and 5 patches along each side. I mean, what is the deal with this? They're originally from Japan, first found in the US in 1916 in New Jersey. It's not a serious pest in Japan, where there are relatively few large grassy areas favourable for its reproduction. The action of predators, parasites and pathogens keep beetle numbers low. In the US, however, a favourable climate, large areas of permanent turf for reproduction, and ineffectual natural enemies favour increased population densities. It's considered a serious pest of turf, and adults damage a wide variety of both ornamental and agricultural plants. I mean, it's a horrible thing. Maybe it's not the Japanese one. Maybe it's just the June bug. Maybe the June bug is a better name for it. It might be the fig beetle. But it's just huge. Yeah, here we go. Someone's saying, I recently moved to Southern California and these bugs are flying all over the place. I was terrified at first, but someone told me they aren't harmful. They're actually quite beautiful, and they fly really slowly at times, and you can catch them. What? I don't want to catch one. Although it sounds like a large bee while flying, they're called green fruit beetles. Green fruit beetle. Although they'll eat your backyard fruit. They're gigantic. Gigantic. We're going to talk to Hal in just a second. I'm standing by for him. The moment he pops in, we'll say hi. But in the meantime, the green June beetle is native to Kentucky, apparently. Green June beetles are in the same genus as fig eaters, a strictly Western species. We suspect their larvae may share many of the same characteristics. Interesting. I mean, I don't know. I worry that these things are secretly taking over the earth, you know? They've got all the knowledge. Peter's just joined us. Hi, Peter. Welcome to Backchannel. I'm Anthony. JD, welcome. Nice to see you. Charles is with us. Matthew, Chris, correct. Isabel, James, William, Robin, Ryan, Margaret, Andrea, Amazon, Danar, Matthew, Emily, and Davey, and John, and Steve, and Ace. Thank you for spending your time with Backchannel. You can just have us on wherever you are, and just join in. It's just a bit of company, really, isn't it? You can talk to me, go to backchannel.tv, and you can chat there. And otherwise, just enjoy and watch and sit and listen. We've learned a lot today. We've talked about a whole bunch of things. Prince Andrew. We've talked about Black History Month. Dr. Margaret James Strickland Collins. We've talked about Donald Trump and his finances and his accountancy firm dropping him. And we also talked about gun control off the back of the anniversary of the Sandy Hook school massacre. And we looked through the morning papers and we saw exactly what was going on all around the country. So today has been, it's been jam-packed, and we do it every day, 5 days a week, from 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern. Let's say hi to your pal and my pal, Hal.
Good morning, Anthony. Pleasure to see you.
Good morning. What a pleasure. How lovely to see you. How's everything?
You know what? Can't complain. Most people don't want to hear it. You know what? I keep it bottled up until I go on the air. Then I'll start complaining.
That's a good idea. Just let it out. Yes. I mean, I actually think of this show as therapy in a way. It's like it's just a 2-hour talking therapy where you get to just air your grievances and hopefully some, positive moments as well. But it's
Absolutely.
Just nice to be able to just talk to someone.
A pressure release valve.
Yeah, I think so. And also for me, like, it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning for me. So it's like I wake up and I'm like, right, I'm going into therapy. I do actually have a therapist, and I have to see him at 7:30 in the morning because this show's in the way.
Ooh,
so
too early.
I already had therapy this morning before I've come to therapy here.
Very nice. Is your therapist located in the States or the UK?
No, in the UK.
Gotcha.
I can't pay American prices for therapy, especially.
Ridiculous.
It's like $200 or $300 for an hour. Forget it.
Listen, get yourself into a medical situation in the United States, go bankrupt. God bless the USA.
Yeah, it's tragic, isn't it? I mean, but the thing is, they shouldn't, to have a psychotherapist shouldn't really be like a medical situation. Everyone should have one. It's like, it's so wonderful.
I agree and disagree because, mental health is a real thing.
Yeah.
And, they are health professionals. I had a friend who did not want to, who never wanted to see a therapist. And like my take on that is it's like, because he didn't want to divulge personal information to a quote unquote stranger. My take on that is if you're bleeding out, it's like you need to go to the hospital, but the person who's bleeding saying, oh, no, I don't want my body to be touched by a stranger.
Yeah.
There are people who can, put the pieces together for you.
But there is, the Hippocratic Oath. The whole point of you going to a medical professional is that your data and your information is confidential. And, you speak in confidence. And that's why sometimes it's better to go to a professional person rather than a friend. And I've got a whole bunch of friends that I'm very happy to talk to and tell them everything. But in terms of really trying to explore the depths of your own mind. And in my case, it's all to do with my childhood trauma and trying to work out how to live happily as an adult without the effects of my childhood haunting me as a grown-up. And
I appreciate
it's
that.
a wonderful thing. I love it. I actually literally cannot wait to get into therapy. It's just a shame that it's now at 7:30 in the morning, but that's okay.
I hear you. Very nice. Yeah, I see a therapist on occasion.
As and when you need it.
Yeah, usually it's like maybe once a month, and and I've seen seen therapists, or as I like to call them, talk doctors. Mm-hmm. Getting if you want to get a little jocular, you can say getting a checkup from the neck up, and throughout my adult life, and I think it's incredibly valuable to unpack. You know what? I'm lucky to have friends who are confidants. But it's a whole nother realm to just be able to talk without judgment to a therapist.
Yeah, that's really the thing, isn't it? It's without the judgment, and you can say things that might shock other people, and your therapist will just be like, okay. And it's like, wow, that feels kind of good. You know, it encourages you to say more.
Indeed.
But all I do is really talk about my desire to eat my feelings.
Oh, sure.
You know, it's
Listen.
like, don't leave any snacks in the house.
Vice comes in many different forms, Anthony. Yeah. Some people are addicted to love. Let me ask you a question, Anthony. Did you, I don't mean to pry, I don't want to get too personal, but I want to know, we are talking personally here. Did you do anything for Valentine's Day? Was there any celebration or acknowledgement?
Zero.
Of Valentine's?
Zero. I was left alone in an apartment to be with myself and my feelings. I think that might have been why I needed the therapy this morning.
Oh, sure. Listen, I've been there before many times. So thankfully, I am with my wife, and we had just a little bit of acknowledgement of the day. But I had to work last night. I teach as well, so I was teaching.
What do you teach?
Last night? I teach writing and performance, comedy writing and comedy performance.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you know something interesting? You might not know this statistic. It's not a statistic. It's just a thing, which I think is fascinating. That American actors and comedians and performers, they take classes throughout their whole career. You know, they keep training and retraining and sharpening the tool and polishing the skill. And in England, we don't do this. You go to drama school, you leave drama school at 18 or 21 or whatever age that you graduate, and you never go to another class your whole life. That's it. You're done.
Interesting.
So all of the great British actors that you revere,
sure,
they haven't had an acting class since they left school.
Wow. All of the sirs, all of the dames.
Yeah. We don't we don't keep
Anthony,
retraining.
I love the sirs and the dames.
I know, me too. But why do you think that is? Why do you think Americans have this desire to keep, just to keep working on their skill and honing their skill? Is it because there's more people in the country and it's more competitive and you've got to be at your best? Or is it cultural?
Well, I think you nailed something with that first statement, in as much as, it's so competitive. Sometimes you need the classes to keep those muscles loose in between gigs. Also, there are, what I teach, it's sort of a continuing education for a performer. It's like improv comedy, creating original characters for yourself, writing for yourself as a performer. So that's something you can continue and do at any age. And some people like that classroom environment to give them that structure and that impetus to have to, I have an assignment I have to complete. And I like being beholden to a teacher in a class environment.
Your voice is a little bit like Michael Douglas. Have you been told that before?
Oh, I'll take it. I had a friend.
Have Michael Douglas's voice.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm a fan of the Kaminsky method, which I'm now imagining you as the teacher in his acting class.
Oh, I love it.
Seriously, if you close your eyes,
seen several
you've got Michael
episodes.
Douglas's voice.
I have a good friend who does a Michael Douglas impression, and he says one of the keys to that is to keep that smile on your face as you're talking. And sometimes, like, changing your resting face can help you change your speaking voice.
Right.
A little bit.
Do you like that
smiling
show,
or
Kaminsky
frowning?
Method, or is it too much of
Oh, I enjoy it. I haven't seen all of it. I think my wife has watched it completely through without me, but I've seen a few episodes, and what I've seen, I've really enjoyed, because Michael Douglas and what's his name? The other actor, Alan Arkin. And everybody on that show is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great show. Talking of which, what have you got coming up?
Oh, you know what? I don't know if you're a fan of the Muppets, Anthony.
Big fan, like insane levels of fandom with the Muppets.
Oh,
you might have
fantastic.
picked the one thing that might be like,
So yesterday we were reading some Valentine's Day tweets, and there was one from Miss Piggy, and that inspired me. Today we're going to do a Twitter deep dive into the Twitter account of Kermit the Frog. What does Kermit tweet? So that is one of the hard-hitting news stories that we will cover.
That's very interesting.
today.
There's a very good Muppet Kermit the Frog scandal, which is the guy that has been Kermit the Frog for the last 20 years got fired from the show because he was a little bit crazy, and the new guy, Matt, who I know a little bit, is wonderful. So there's a whole like behind the scenes thing, and the guy who played Kermit like kicked off and put all these blogs out, and it was like wow, like Kermit had another side. So you might be interested in looking into that because it's very funny.
Possibly. Thank you for the tip, Anthony.
Of course. Okay. Take care and enjoy.
Pleasure talking.
Great to see you. Bye for now. That's Hal. He's your pal. He's next. I'm back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great day. Bye for now.